the most vibrant and fascinating celebration, showcasing its history and cultural tradition. Pintados Festival is where we encounter dances, blaring non-secular music, men and women with painted or tattooed bodies, initiates religious and cultural festivities as part of the city's fiesta celebration. The Bped EP32 Productions presents a documentary film, An Introduction to Pintados Festival, ang pagsantok ng pagsalinuro. Bilang pagbibigay pugay sa Pintados Festival, ito ay ipagdiriwang ngayong darating na ika-29 ng Hunyo. Kaugnay nito, ang aming pangkat ay nagsaliksik sa ilang mga waraynon upang makahingi ng kanilang ideya, hinuha at kaalaman patungkol sa pagdiriwang ng Pintados kasadyaan.
Maupay na adlaw, adi kita yan na Tacloban City para pakyanan ang mga Taclobanon han ira-aram party han Pintados Festival. So maupay na kulop ha iyo na duwa. So maupay na taga di dila ka mo Tacloban? Diin ha Tacloban? CRS. Ikaw ate?
Pattern extension.
Pattern extension. Yan naman pakyanan ako. Maro ba ka mo hit Pintados Festival? Maro ka ba hit Pintados Festival?
I actually do know what the Pintados Festival is about. It's held mostly, I think, in Grandstand, right? It's like a celebration here in our region about different kinds of culture.
Ano't imo aram hit Pintados Festival?
The celebrated festival, tas nagpipintar-pintar ra.
Na tribute inihiya from our ancestors of Tacloban na or maybe Leyte, I don't know where in particular. Tapos these are bagan form of celebrating people, maybe way han mga people from before na with tattoos and all, and amatiya celebration tawan Tacloban.
Ito ang amoy niton pinaka-main yan na festival na natatabungan niya Tacloban.
Anak ko lang na kabaruan ito, nagsasarayo, nagpaparito ka dito, amo lang nabaruan.
What I know about Pintados Festival, it's a festival din sa Tacloban City particularly.
May idea ka ba kung saan o natikang ini ng Pintados Festival?
Actually, pag nagkukuha nitong Pintados nga dito itong June, so masabot ko dito na Pintados na pa sa pag-abot in June.
It's usually celebrated beginning month of June, I think. Yeah, from
Mga June, basapis sa Tacloban.
Mga 27th June
June of 27. Oh, 27th of June.
hanggang 30 po.
Okay.
Yeah, conduct nagsasayop every 29th iton June.
29th of June, oo. Do you have an idea on kaya ano hiyagin sa celebrate?
I really don't have an idea to why it's celebrated, but I think that the general idea of me knowing what Pintados is about is like the celebration of like the whole region.
Itong pagkita ko kasi pagkang kaniya kanan aton pag saurog atong culture tapos itong history gihapon nga niya Tacloban kung kaya no na pintado sa tabo may dagyapito kuan siguro nga da balyuan natatabuan kuan pag basta nga amo neto ya.
Yun na nga, to celebrate the history of this region han mga waray nun.
Isisilibran Pintados Festival para kuan kalipayan nit pista sa Tacloban.
Para paikita nga tanan ng mga girls nga kada boro barangay nga ipakita nila showcase nila talent and ability.
Well, technically, we are celebrating Pintados Festival in honor of our saint, particularly Saint Nino.
Thank you nga, maupay na gabi.
Maupay man gabi. Hello, shout out, Charis.
Sa pagpapatuloy ng paglikom ng datos, nabigyan ng pagkakataon ang aming pangkat na makapanayam ang anak ng dating presidente ng Pintados Foundation na si Mrs. Evelina Acevedo.
I am Mrs. Acevedo. I was introduced by my mother to the members of the Sanghiran San Binisaya as a young girl, young woman in fact, and then we were introduced to the writers, authors of the region. And so when we were introduced, I was feeling rather scary because I have met some people who have been writing and doing these things. And then henceforth, I was being invited to their meetings and the like. I would attend. Although at that time, I was not really into it, but I was forced into it because my mother was also there. And since she was the daughter of the poet laureate, she took it as her what do you call it, task, that the future of Leyte and Samar literature would not die. That began our trip in the beautiful land of, these things.
About the history of the festival, what is Pintados Festival?
Pintados Festival, actually, when we began this, the festival was already starting. I mean, there were already starting studies, because they came in with the Spanish people. So everybody was conscious about it. So more or less, we knew what we had to do, because we already had a little tingling of our dialect and our what we do with our culture. A little,
Yeah. And where did the word Pintados come from?
Pintados comes from the word, actually, the root. It means the root, Pintados. Yes. And then this was because the first group that came had the Spanish writers also coming with the old Spanish settlers.
Yeah.
They came with them, and so we became involved with them.
When and where the Pintados started?
Beautiful summer.
Beautiful summer.
Yes.
And what is Pintados now? Was there any changes in Pintados in terms of its culture and celebration?
During that time, we were not very sure about what our root was, because it was composed of the Spanish people and the settlers that came with them. So, but then we were very open to changes and what it is that we are supposed to know. And this began in Divine Word University. There were many researchers who were there not for anything else but because they wanted to write about our past. We had something that we felt we had to do for ourselves as Waray. And so it began like that.
So does it celebrate differently today and before?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Because we began as a young group. The Leyte Samar Museum immediately took care of these researches and had writers come in, invited the writers to come in and write. So I know, for example, Ma'am Cleo.
Yeah.
Ma'am Cleo, her father was one of the writers. Also, I had a chance of working with him. They were never selfish about what they came up with. Many of us never really were researchers. For example, although I did researches, I was only then a young teacher. So I worked with them. Also, I was working with the writers.
What can you see about Pintados from before and right now?
We've been trying to come up with the real incidents that we met. When we opened up the Pintados, when we started with the Pintados, we had a hard time because there were some who would not fit in to what we were thinking. But there were also people not only from Samar, but also from, for example, what do you call this town? Tanawan Leyte, who were doing researches, and we were working together. Together as you know, not for the money or whatever. It was really for the past. Like you may not have had the experience of like counting songs, like May Usa, May Duha, May Tulo. So we were in that also, trying to find what to do with this, and then also about the attire or costume of the people, because they were different. They were different then. Although we tried to fit in very well, it was difficult because they had different ways of, the clothes and so on.
So there was really a difference between the celebration of Pintados before and right now?
No, not much.
Not much.
If you start considering how young I am, not much, because, I was one of the original members.
Why do we celebrate Pintados?
We need to. That's our identity.
In terms of the unique dances and movements of Pintados, first is what are the preparation of Pintados Foundation Incorporated to honor and celebrate Senior Santo Niño?
Since a lot of time has passed by, we try our very best to contact those who have also the past in their minds. Like, we used to dance, we used to try to bring this back so it will not get lost. Also, especially because we had to come up with literature to keep it alive.
So in terms of the dances and movements of the Pintados Festival, what are those dances and movements that are being used?
Until today, they're still being used, except that there are some choreographers who try to make a variation, but most often we follow the original, because the first batch that came dancing were members of the dance troupe in Divine Word. So in fact, LNU was also one of the winners before.
So how does this movements and dances of Pintados Festival created?
Most often they came from actually the first batch of dancers. We invited the Pintados dance troupe. What I mean by Pintados, the members of the dance troupe.
So there was really a dance troupe for Pintados,
Which we created. Because there were no members yet. And it was the dance troupe that made it live on through the years.
So what was the inspiration of the dance and movements?
Because I think they also loved the dance. They loved the dance and they loved to do it. So we had members coming in from Divine Word and some coming in from other schools. And so we were able to keep this. Even now, I still see them.
So, ma'am, what do you think, what makes Pintados Festival unique from other festivals?
It's because of the roots. Yes. Because we were not into it for any other reason than because it is the root of our dialect and our messages.
What's your message to the current generation and to the future generation?
I think we should let this grow because it is us. I mean, it's us, really us.
What do you think, ma'am, will be your advice to us from this new generation to keep these practices, to keep this festival, be celebrated?
We've been celebrating it for how many years? Long time. Even this year we celebrated, and now again back to it. So we should let it survive. If the Spanish people came in and taught us what to do, I think it's also we have to do the same thing.
The Pintados Festival is significantly part of our history and culture as it upholds the traditions of our ancestors. And by annually celebrating this festival, we commemorate, preserve, and aim to pass these practices from generation to generation. This coming 29th of June, let us celebrate cultural religious festival filled with various activities that both locals and tourists would enjoy. This documentary film is associated with Readings in Philippine History, Pintados Foundation, and Ren's Creations. A Bped EP32 Productions presents Pintados Festival, ang pagsantok ng pagsaling-urog.